Well, guys, if ignorance is bliss, you're looking at the happiest guy in the whole dang township right now. Actually, we're done with the ignorance, I hope. I was working on this MS250, getting ready to come out here and do some saw cuts. Anyhow, I've already put it on dyno. We'll get that here in just a little bit, and I'm not going to make this intro too long. We'll get right into building the saw. But I found a glitch in my dyno. It didn't make any of the previous results bad, but it did give my numbers lower than what they should have been. And I knew it was happening, or I felt it was happening. I'm like, man, my numbers ought to be higher than what they are. And I could have made them, I could change anything in there I want. I could have changed it and made it read a higher horsepower, but we're not into that. We're not into lying to each other. And if I thought, well, if that's what it is, then it just is what it is. So I was sitting there this morning, I had these dyno numbers, and I was pulling up one from my old, before I ever got my spreadsheet going that well, I pulled up an old one, and I went and cut and pasted the results in there, or not the results, but the numbers, and they didn't correlate right. At some point, I had changed one of my formulas, and I had changed a letter from an I to a J, and it was pulling from the wrong column, which was close, but no cigar. Oh man, I'm just happy enough. Why, shucks, I got to sit on my hands to keep from clapping. It's great. So anyhow, without further ado, I'm going to run you into the video. What I did to this MS250. We'll do some dyno results. I'll bring you, while you're watching that, I'm going to get this warmed up. We'll do some test cuts. We'll record them. Guys, I'm elated. I figured out my ignorance. I hate being ignorant, and I figured it out. So, well, yeah, just loving life. Oh, sunshine. Now we're going to see what we can do with this MS250. I've worked on it before. Customer brought it back. Got a little too much compression in her, I think. But for not having a spark plug in it, that's a little too much. I don't know. We've seized her up somehow. I've ported on this before, so if it's my fault, we're going to see that too. Yeah, stick around. We'll see what we got. I'll get this thing yanked apart. Well, I told you I'd tell you if I done something wrong, and I did. Here's my port work. You can see what I did for the transfers down here. That helped it out quite a bit. The exhaust had been done. It's got a little bit of oil on it, but it was pretty nice exhaust. Just mirror finish, ain't nothing sticking to it. The intake was textured there and opened up just where it needed to be. I'd have to check my book. I changed the intake timing just a little bit, but not much. So what happened to it? And I'd done nice piston work on the inside, relieved all my stress risers, had that all smoothed up pretty nice. And of course you put it all together and you put your little clips in there. And before I knew any better, we didn't cut those ears off there. And when I pulled that out, this here side looks fine. That one was complete. This here side, you can see where one come out. There was just one ear left on it, and about half the clip was all that was left. She beat down through there, come up through there, seized, just smeared right across there and there. And there, guarded up the intake side quite a bit. There's a little piece of that clip stuck in there. So there's what it is. It's all my fault. Ain't no doubt about it. If I'd have cut them ears off that clips, I don't think she'd have happened. Chalk one up for warranty work, right? Get another one put together. I'll tell you what timing numbers are, and we'll get it on dyno and see where we're at. This was a good running saw, and I'm going to build the next one substantially similar. I'll show you what I did. I built this one long before I ever had even as much of a YouTube channel as I have now, which ain't much, but it is what it is. This saw was, to me, it was a compliment. I'm a hack. Everybody knows I'm a hack, but I can build a saw that's sometimes better than the other ones.
And this one here, I took that as a great compliment. The guy that runs this, and he runs it a lot, that's his go-to saw for an MS250. And he's got MS362, MS360, 044, or a 440, and it might be an 046. I don't remember, I've not worked on it. 034 Super, between him and his dad. And he picks up his 250 all the time to saw his firewood there. Unless it's great big stuff. So that's a pretty good compliment, because he bought this saw brand new and just stood in the barn, couldn't stand to use it, didn't use it. Wanted me to port it, I ported it, put a pop-up piston in it, and he just uses it all the time. Back then I wasn't keeping track of piston weights and stuff either. So, but I still had them all laying here because, hey, I don't throw much away. The original cylinder, stock cylinder, was 99 exhaust, 156 duration, so 78 on the intake, and Squish was 42. Little red barn piston, that's what this was. That put, and I didn't write down the Squish back then either on this one, I guess. But anyhow, was at 98 exhaust and 176 on intake. So what's 176? That's 88. Well, that sounds like a lot, but it is. And the thing I noticed on these little red barn pistons, the stock cylinder right here, and I'm gonna keep looking over here at my notes. I'll bring them back so I can see you. The stock piston was 48.25 grams, and I had a cylinder and piston laying around here aftermarket Chinesium, and it weighed, this was 48.25 grams, that was 48.65 grams, so they're pretty daggum similar. 0.4 grams, that's not much difference. Little red barn piston, and yeah, the rings are in it, but I subtracted what the rings weigh, because the rings are hooched. They're just welded right in this and here when it run that circlip through there. 61.58 grams is what it was down to after I'd already lightened it some. This new piston was 60. It was 61 and a half-ish grains too, almost identical before I started, you know, lightening on the inside. And you don't lose that much, but you lose some. I lost a grain or two, or a gram or two, but you can just tell this piston is a lot heavier up here in the head. It's got a thicker top end on it. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say, but it's thicker up here, and it's a lot heavier. They got full contact of the cylinder down here below the wrist pin on the little red barn cylinder. I don't know that we need that because of the way the transfers. The only place that is going to hit that skirt is that one land in between your on your lower transfers, or whatever you want to call them. So I took and ordered another piston. They're not, I'm not going to say they're bad, and I'm not going to say they're good. They're different. They are a pop-up piston. It's the only one I know of, so there's maybe some issues with them. I've read bad things. This is the second or third one I've used, and I've not had any issues other than you don't want to just go to blind porting and get one of these, because there are some different things on them. On the intake side of this stock piston, they do the intake timing a little bit with this cutout. Well, the little red barn piston has a lot, and I'm going to see if, and the pin heights are about the same. Hopefully you can see that in that shadow. That's the equivalent of taking that much out of the intake. So, and that's what I was getting at on the other one. This cylinder timed 156 on the intake with this cylinder, or with this slug, this piston, and 176. So 20 degrees more duration just by changing over to this piston. So you don't want to do a whole lot of grinding. I will show you, those are both little red barn pistons here, but I did take and chuck that up in the mill and cut that off. May be a mistake, may not, I don't know. And then I milled through there and straightened that up some. So we took and deburred now, and we got a little bit more deburn, but we're going to run her through the crock pot, cook it for a little while, and get her cleaned up, get some timing numbers, and see where we're at. I got to go. I got something trying to kill my chickens. So you can see what I've done in here on the primary end, on the side of the primary intake, the one that primary transfer that points to the intake. You'll see we've trenched that out in there. Get some good flow up through there. Same thing on the secondary side. Not quite as much as we did on the primary side, but we haven't not messed with the intake and exhaust timing numbers on this saw yet, due to the fact of that piston I'm running, planning on running is a little red barn piston, and the difference in cylinders. This one right here, that was the stock Stihl cylinder, and you can tell the aftermarket stock cylinder has already a lot bigger exhaust. I don't think I want to enlarge that yet. I want to take it apart and see how it runs, or put it together and see how it runs. Maybe get it on dyno, but I think we'll be satisfied with the stock. I think we'll be satisfied with the stock exhaust on it. It's 99 degrees. Well, I don't know what it is. I won't know, I guess, till I get this in here put together. I haven't timed this one yet, and that's another reason I'm not tearing it apart yet. And on the intake, I told you guys earlier, those little red barn pistons are cut. They're cut up higher on the intake side of that skirt, so you got to watch that. They're not going to time the same as another aftermarket piston. So without further ado, here we went. I'm going to throw it back in. I'm going to give it one more dose in the cleaner, and I'm going to put it together enough to time it at least. Thought I'd show you the exhaust that I run on this MS250. Been running on it for a while. I've built a couple like it. People seem to like them. They ain't in the way of too much, and they seem to pull a little better. And maybe they don't. I've never run one of them on dyno. Maybe they work better, maybe they don't. There's basically a stock one, and they got a cage on the inside of them. Of course, I peel that apart around there, get this cage out, and you still got to put those spacers back in, or it'll just crush, because your exhaust bolts are plumb on the outside. So if you don't put those spacers back in there, it'll just crush that plate, and it ain't gonna do any good. It won't stay sealed up. So that can be a booger sometimes, getting them in there. You can see on the stock exhaust there's a little divot in there, and that's where your screen and stuff would go. And the first time I beat that out and welded this pipe in, that didn't work well. It weakened that all up. So next time I cut that out, and then I welded this piece here to a little plate. You can see it's probably 1/16 of an inch thick. Brazed it around there, and then brazed that plate to it. And then, just to Joe-proof it a little bit, I put a kickstand on the side of it, because that's what he was doing. He was maybe rock that into a log and hit that. So it was a bad design. I'm giving him a hard time for being hard on stuff, but really it needed, that kickstand fixed it up. So I just thought I'd catch you up. That's 3/4 OD. She's about 610,000, 605 thousandths ID. So that's about 5/8 of an inch. I don't know, what's that make? 15 millimeter, 16 millimeter for the metric guys. Something like that, I think. You guys didn't get to see the first start. Sorry about that. That is what it is. And we're just doing saw repair. We ain't. We'll let that get a few heat cycles in it, and we'll get her on dyno. Now, I guess it probably depends on your cylinder and your piston combination, or whatever you're going to wind up with. But I found with these little red barn pistons, I'm not knocking them. I ain't standing up for them. I ain't putting them down. I've used them. But you got to watch what you're doing. This one here was dangerously close to free porting due to the piston skirt being shorter on this. So, and I knew that going in. I did not raise the exhaust or lower the intake at all on this. I didn't even mess with the ports. I maybe widened the exhaust port 5 thousandths while I was in there just cleaning up. I did clean them up, get the flashing off of them, smooth them up. But other than that, I didn't touch intake or exhaust. Lower transfers and a pop-up piston, basically all this got in the muffler mod. Now the one before it, I had opened up the intake some on the stock one, but this aftermarket cylinder, the exhaust was bigger than what I had even opened up the exhaust on it before. So there you go, and you guys seen that. So guys, let's get her on dyno and see what we can figure out with her.
Still happy. 20-inch bar red oak. That's the way to go right there. Take a Husqvarna bar and modify it. Let's warm her up and do some cascades. Oh man, I'm happy. In here, everybody, we'll take a look at the dyno results, plus we'll take a look a little bit up top. Not got too much going on this one. This MS250, of course it wasn't running when I got in here, so I don't have a before and after run. This is just what we got with it. Not broke in on the rings or anything. It ain't had a half tank gas through it still. I'll let that guy do. He can break her in as he runs her. I'll get over to his house coyote hunting one of these days and readjust the carburetor if that's what it needs. So anyhow, we wound up at about 3.36 horse, and that hit that at about 96.41 on the RPMs. It held pretty good and pretty flat. It's pretty usable from about 10.5, 10.7 all the way down to about 7,500. Of course, it's got some more right in here. If you can hold her, it seemed to cut pretty good. I'd say around 10,000 RPMs right in there, held real good. And I think that pipe helps it a little bit. But yeah, so our horsepower numbers, you guys have probably never noticed it before. Up there it used to say BUP, which was brake unicorn power, because there was just one point I didn't like, so I didn't call it horsepower on my own spreadsheet. But I really thought it was as close as I could get it. The horsepower numbers seem to be running lower than I thought what they should have been. I never, like a stock saw, they never run stock numbers on my dyno, and it is what it is. I could have made a match. I could have played around, but it'd have been lying, because I thought all my inputs were correct. And actually my inputs over here are correct. I had a miscalculation in this column, and you can see what that is. That's sum parentheses I2 times K2 divided by 5252 times negative 0.1. And the only reason I do negative 0.1 is because I got the RPMs in negative numbers, so it will run from high RPM to low RPM across the chart down here. See, I got to run negative numbers, and I want this chart to run how you're pulling the saw down. You squeeze the throttle right here, you start putting load to it, and it starts building horsepower until you choke it out down here. Don't get me wrong, I love Dyno Joe, love him to death. It just took me a bit to get his. I don't like his. That ain't the way I prefer my sheet to run, I guess. I like it like this. It's more intuitive to me. So that's the negative number there, and that's the only reason we got a times negative 1 up to, is to turn that one back to a positive, so it'll read right. That's just manipulating the numbers. Or manipulating the scales all those negative numbers are for. But you guys will notice the screen on the inset I put in there. A lot of times it'll show, you'll be seeing the RPM 7906 was the top, 7880. Yeah, I can't hardly see, my eyes are fuzzing up on me trying to look here at TV. You guys are watching here on, and so on and so forth. Well, that's not the actual speed. That is a calculation of the drive gear times, or the drive gear and the driven gear, and the fact that this number is twice as high as what the shaft RPM actually is. The shaft RPM is 3953, but I'm getting a reading of 7906, which is double that, because I have two magnets on my pickup on my Hall effect sensor. Then that gets divided by 7/20, or whatever that factor is, which is it equals out to it's dividing it by 0.7, I think. Well, there you go. Yeah, 0.9, so it's divided by 0.9. Yeah, it's divided by 0.7. Which gives you the actual RPM of the engine. Okay, where I had messed up before, and I don't know how I did it, I was pulling to get horsepower, you take engine RPM times torque divided by 5252, or actually a shaft RPM. Wherever you're measuring torque at, whatever shaft you're measuring is the one you need to multiply that speed by. You can't take the speed of the engine and the torque of this, because that is showing 5.940 pounds. Well, that's not correct for this calculation. It calculates down, you guys see that up there as it reads, but that actually calculates down to 1.11 horsepower at that one, due to my torque arm length is only 4.242 inches long, which gives it this factor. And it also has to be recalculated going through the gear reduction to make it correspond to the chainsaw. So that's where the 0.35 factor comes in. Those factors, I can change that to like an 8 pin sprocket, and you'll see what'll happen. It changed everything, and it changed all my horsepower too, because it brought my engine RPMs down. Everything on this daggum sheet is modular, or I've made it so I can change stuff if something changes. I don't have to rebuild the whole spreadsheet. That got me. It didn't get me. I don't know how I did it. I had the wrong letter in in one of those, and I was actually reading horsepower on this shaft and this torque. Oh, son of a gun. So no wonder I was reading the low torque. I was only reading about 7/10 of the horsepower, so I was only reading. But anyhow, so I digress. So when we get back to the Stihl 026, we're going to see our horsepower jump up a little bit. We didn't do nothing other than fix the dyno sheet, the spreadsheet, and I'm sure glad it wasn't. I didn't fudge it. I found a mistake. I fixed a mistake. I can live with that. I don't have a bit of problem finding or fixing mistakes. But I wasn't going to just change it because I didn't like how low the numbers were. I always thought they were wrong. I finally figured out why they're wrong. It's a reason I can stand behind, I can get behind, I can explain, I can quantify it. I can say, yes, now this is correct. I was incorrect before. And so there we go. So guys, I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to, we're going to have some more spreadsheet stuff going with the next dyno runs on this 026, because we're going to start putting some more factors besides horsepower and torque and engine RPM in it. We're going to start putting some more factors in here, just so we can see what we're doing and see what affects what. So guys, stick around. If you, give her a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you like seeing stuff like this. Comment if you can help me out down there, like what I'm doing, or have suggestions on other stuff we can try. I think the next when I get the 026 going, you guys will see some drastic changes there, and then where we can move forward from that. So guys, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.